So in the last video, we talked through why reverse key and Rembrandt lighting isn't the only like cinematic lighting hack, and we were talking through 6 different setups. We talked through 3 in part 1. If you haven't watched that yet, go back and watch part 1 first, so this will make sense. Otherwise, let's dig into the next setup. Now this one is certainly the one that I was most worried about for sure, because it's the one that I think is the hardest to make look good, and it's the exact opposite of reverse key light, where you're going to front light your subjects. The thing though is that, and I think you'll see on this image here, it's actually still like a pretty good looking frame. So one, like you shouldn't be afraid of front lighting something all the time. I think you can still make it look good. The other part of it too is like there's definitely still story justifications to have front lighting, and there's also just practical reasons where you're going to have a front lit scene. I think about like this scene from The Notebook. They're underneath like the awning of like this sidewalk area next to these storefronts. The sun is coming in because it's daytime. Like it would be pretty odd to try to beat the sun and reverse key Rembrandt like this when we're shooting from the street and looking at them this way. The only way to kind of do that would be to have lights coming from like the storefronts that would be brighter than the sun. Like practically it just wouldn't make sense. So sometimes like just the way that you're going to block a scene and how it's going to be portrayed where you're shooting from, it's just going to be shot and you're gonna have to like front light it. But there is actually a good story driven reason to front light scenes, and that could be because maybe you're trying to make your character look a little bit more open and honest, the level of transparency. You could also be just trying to show a light moment before we take a darker turn in your film, and maybe you're trying to show some sort of visual contrast there. So there's definitely good reasons to front light a scene. It's not always just because you have to out of like some practical purpose. And the surprising thing is, the more that I study more and more films, you actually see a lot of front lit scenes. It's talked about like in our circles of like, this is the thing that should be avoided at all costs. You should always be trying to like backlight and reverse key light scenes and stuff like that. And again, if you're looking through movies, you're gonna see a lot of reverse key shots, probably more than most other shots. You're gonna see a lot of Rembrandt lighting. You're gonna see a lot of that, but you will see a lot of front lit shots. It's actually way more common than you think, and it actually can look really good. I think that's what's nice about this part over here on Brianna when we did our scene. So again, over on this side now, let me take this off. We've got this key light that's here, that's now on the front side, sharing the same side as our camera. So they're on the same side. And what we've lost here is certainly all this depth that we had on the face before, because all of this is now in light, right? So we did lose all of that. But in this scene, we didn't lose all of our depth or anything either. Now, I did a lot to try to intentionally make it still have a lot of depth, because I opened up a little bit on the aperture. We switched and kicked up the kicker light a little bit on her other side, but we do still have a good amount of depth here. I mean, if we're taking a look at the patterns, we've got this darkness on the background here, then we've got some light on her hair that stretches across her face. We still have then some darkness on this side of her face here, and then we've got the light that's coming from like the kicker light on her hair here and stuff. Then we've got dark background again, and that continues across the frame where we've of course got darkness here, light here. We've got dark light over here again after that. So we're still getting a good checker pattern. Now, is it as much contrast as our first scene here and as much depth? No, I don't think it's as much, but it's not bad by any means. And again, I think this actually ended up being a good looking shot that does make Brianna look a little bit less dramatic, a little bit more honest, a little bit more innocent. So I think there's definitely times that you would want to use a front lit scene. So the next one is silhouettes, and silhouettes are amazing, and you will see silhouettes in so many beautiful movies. I think it's like one of my favorites. It's very powerful type of image. I think it brings a lot of emotion, but it's just really aesthetically pleasing, and I think you just get such a great level of contrast. But from a story perspective, if you're trying to look at this and try to use this from like an emotional standpoint, it usually drives this level of like mystery and power. Obviously you can't see into the details, so there's definitely mystery there because you don't know exactly what it is, what the face is showing if they're facing you. I think a really great example of that was just Obsession. After seeing that, that. There were so many moments where she was just like almost completely silhouette. You barely catch any details of her face, and it brought such a powerful like level of suspense to it. And I think that's kind of the other part of it, that it can be emotionally a little bit maybe scary too, because, you know, as humans, we fear what we don't know, what we can't see. So it can drive this like powerful, like emotional, scary kind of mood to it. And it's really easy to accomplish too, because all you have to do is make sure that your background is pretty much brighter than your foreground and that you don't have a lot of light coming back onto your talent. So ultimately what we had in our scene here for Brianna was we just had this like 600D that was going up into the ceiling. I think we might have had the 300C back here too, but just basically giving level to the background. And then on top of that, of course, we had this practical lamp over on this side. And then we just didn't have any light that was coming onto Brianna's face. We had a little bit of a kicker hitting her on the back here, but we had a ton of, not a ton, we had 2 floppies, but we had negative fill coming on both sides of Brianna to just make sure that there wasn't any light returning onto her. You could also just move her much further away from the light if that works in your set as well, and that would help, you know, just not get as much return. In our living room, there's like a bunch of light coming back off of the walls, and a lot of them are all white, so a lot of return and ambient tone coming in. So we blocked it with some negative fill coming in here. And I just think, yeah, a super simple but effective way, especially compared to what this scene looks like compared to if we lit her with a reverse key Rembrandt lighting. They're totally different shots, obviously, but that's the whole point. Like, you can provide a lot of variety in your film, a lot of different emotions if you're switching up your lighting setups, and this is a really great example of that, and silhouettes are they're just beautiful. Let's move on to the last lighting setup, which really isn't one lighting setup. It's kind of that you could just have a lot of fun with really random lighting setups. In our example, we chose to have Brianna, like, you know, rising up from the cake after maybe falling asleep after, you know, people didn't show up for hours still. Poor Brianna. But she rises up from the cake and then she enters into this little like slit of light. And this could be practically motivated in your scene when you do something like this, because maybe we've already shown that light is coming through like this door or something like that, or we're about to show that. So it could be practically coming from the scene, and like this is just where the light is coming from, which certainly if the light was blasting through like a creak in the door and then you showed her face and it was just kind of normally lit, that wouldn't make a ton of sense. It wouldn't, you know, probably play as well. So practically it can certainly be driven, and then it can again just be used to drive a lot of different emotions here. Like when I look at this image, I'm thinking about, you know, clearly there's something mysterious going on in the way that she's looking, and we can only see one thing, which is just where her eye is going basically in this still. And then, you know, the rest of the frame is really pretty much in darkness, you know, so it drives a lot of focus and attention to one part of the frame, which is fun. But yeah, I mean, this was pretty easy for us to pull off as well, because all this is basically the Amaran F22c going through the spotlight mount, and then we're just closing up the doors, so where we're just getting this slit of light. Favorite example of like one of these is the Pirates of the Caribbean, where Keira Knightley's in the closet and the guy's coming over to get her, and, you know, hello puppet. It's so great. But beautiful shot with that slit on her face. So kind of a similar shot to that. But it's not just like this one slit across the eyes. We did this little vertical, you know, slit across the eyes. There's plenty of examples of these same type of slashes horizontally in other ways and stuff too. But it could be just like light blasting you straight on from like headlights or something like that, or from like, you know, some unnatural form of light source. We've seen characters and talent get up in front of like projectors, and that could be done in like a war room or in the front of a theater. And none of that, and none of these like unique setups are reverse key Rembrandt lighting. Like that's not what anyone is thinking about when they're entering into these scenes and going like, well, how are we gonna light this character? Like in La La Land, when Emma Stone gets up onto the theater in front of the projector, which like I would be furious about if I was watching a movie and someone did that. But if someone in the scene, they weren't sitting there going like, well, you know what we should try to probably do is like screw the projector light on her. Maybe in that moment we can somehow get like a reverse key Rembrandt light triangle on her like face and stuff like that. Like, no, that's not what they were thinking. They were lighting it exactly how it should have been lit for that space and what she was doing for her blocking and her action, and they went from there. I mean, I wasn't there on that day, so I guess I can't say that for sure, but I highly doubt anyone was thinking about reverse key Rembrandt lighting at that point in time. And that's really like the moral of the story is like when you're lighting your film, you shouldn't be thinking about any lighting, method in particular as like the one end all be all. You should be looking at your scene and that moment in the scene and like what emotion you want to drive for your audience at that time. And then you should light the scene that delivers that type of a mood, and then you should light your talent for the blocking that you've, figured out, and it should be to deliver the right mood the whole time. And so many times the answer to that question is not going to be reverse key Rembrandt lighting. It might be front lighting, it might be a silhouette, it might be some other random lighting setup that maybe you're gonna try to invent. I don't know. If you invent something, please let me know. I'd like to see it. But ultimately, there's a lot of different choices that you have out there. So go play around with different lighting setups, go create some variety, go study some films and see how many different lighting setups there truly are. It's not all reverse key Rembrandt lighting. Hope this was helpful. See you in the next one.